I'm back. I was interrupted. It is not that Safaricom had gone on a safari like it has always done, but I had actually received a call. I'm making this video call through my cell phone and not through the normal HOOF-FM equipment, which is presently not here in the studio because I've not been here for quite some time. I've been running up and down, rummaging for and scavenging and prospecting for votes. I was saying that Likiani has 72,449 voters spread across the 5 wards, and they will be voting in 135 streams. Those are 135 polling stations across the constituency. And I also showed you here a sample ballot paper. When you'll be voting tomorrow, you will be confronted by a smaller version of the A4 paper, which I have just generated a few minutes ago. You can see we are actually 9 contestants. All these 9 men are salivating for that one girl called the Likiani parliamentary seat. And the HOOF-MAN is second last in the ballot. The last one is Diberius Ofula Shikuku. He's the 9th, and I'm the 8th. All these are party candidates, save for the HOOF-MAN. My symbol was supposed to be a hoof, but unfortunately, when we were clearing with the ORPP, the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, somebody had booked that symbol, and so we were forced to use letters HOOF emblazoned on a green background. It's not clearly visible here, but it will be better visible on the ballot paper tomorrow. So this is where you're supposed to put your mark. I'm not campaigning. It is illegal to campaign. You know, those who intend to join the National Assembly are tasked with the force of creating legislations, and if you're making laws, you must first demonstrate fidelity to existing statutes, those that were created by others. And the election laws outlaws campaigning at this particular period. And what I'm doing here is basically civic education and not campaigning. So this is where you'll mark your ballot. And after marking your ballot, I hear people say that you're supposed to go back home, lock up yourself in your house or the sitting room. For those who have the hoof eaters, lock yourself in that abode, in the shanty, in the hovel, and then you switch on your Great Wall TV and start watching the results. I don't believe that is what is right, and I also do not believe that after voting you're supposed to group around the polling stations in the name of guarding polls. Each aspirant has an agent dedicatedly tasked with the responsibility of guarding the votes of that particular candidate. And so hanging around the polling station does not add any value in my estimation. And so it will be wise if you vote and leave, but you don't go home. If you always go to the farm, you vote and go back to the farm. If you go to Jokali, you do your Jokali, vote and go back to your Jokali. That state of normalcy is what Kenya needs most, especially here in Soy. You know, Soy has been affected by election-related skirmishes, or rather ethnic animosity, at least 2 times, in 1992 and 2007. So this is what will happen tomorrow. You notice all this are, they are all in ties except the HOOF-MAN. So all these are millionaires because of the misconception I told you about. Kenyans believe that the National Assembly is a club for the elite where deals are cut. But in our thinking, the National Assembly is a sacred house which is supposed to resolve all the challenges facing this country. And that's why you see all these guys are in parties. They belong to political parties. The first one, this one is UPA, this is UDA, this is Mendeleo chapter, this is KTN newscast, Paul Nabiswa, this is DAP, this is ANC, this is ODM, Ford Kenya, UDP. But the HOOF-MAN is the only one who is independent. When everybody is going right, he who chooses to go left has some kind of uniqueness. And since we all agree that this country has had a major derailment from the dreams of the founding fathers of this nation, then it is right to say that it is good to think differently. Now, away from this one, the other issue that I'd wish to talk about is peace. And as I've just mentioned, soy was adversely affected by 2007/2008 post-election skirmishes. And the last 2 days I've seen a Land Cruiser with its door open, with the GSU, some red beret fellows on top, and they're armed to the teeth. I'm not an expert on security matters, but in my estimation, I wish they had a better way of policing, or a better way, because that one creates a notion that all is not well. And that's why you see some people either emptying their shops, or if you stand close to the tarmac, you see trucks with what looks like household goods. Seems some people are somewhat uncertain. So I wish these GSU men, we really appreciate them. And we also know when they're around, nothing can go wrong. But again, they ought to do a careful balancing so that their presence do not create some kind of tension. Because an ordinary citizen would believe that if these guys wameshika doria, if they're patrolling around, then it means that all may not be well based on their intelligence. And I've also always said that because soy can be said to be freed, soy actually straddles the frontiers of two counties, Singishu and Kakamega, but it is majorly populated by citizens of one ethnic community just in the center. But then maybe those who are charged with the responsibility of taking care of our security, had they taken into consideration their previous experiences and believed that something could go wrong. Actually, nobody can tell you absolutely if something can go wrong or everything will be right. But the way with which we conduct ourselves can also either aggravate the situation or lessen the situation or create some tension. Because, you see, if somebody is just comfortable in his farm doing his own things and everybody is also doing the same, it is so different from when we suddenly see GSU going up and down. People may believe that something is going wrong, and so on and so on. And apart from that one, we have also had issues of IEBC. I think in the last few minutes it has been announced that there will be no gubernatorial elections in Kakamega and Mombasa counties. This is because IEBC has just realized that the ballot papers printed for these two counties has some errors. This in essence tells us that the ballot papers were printed, stacked and flown into the country and checked. And this brings into question the competence of Wafula Chebukati. I'm saying so because on previous occasions, Wafula Chebukati has cut a figure of someone who is so confident, and we could say that he was so sure about what he was doing, and nobody would expect that one day to the elections he would appear on our screens to tell us that the gubernatorial elections for Mombasa and those of Kakamega and a couple of some other parliamentary elections have to be deferred because there are some inconsistencies in the ballot papers printed for these affected regions. This one raises a very serious issue of competence and possibly bipartisanness, or rather credibility, of Chebukati and his team. And I've also seen Governor Waiguru complaining that the ballot papers meant for Kirinyaga County have been traced to either Matungu or Mumias in Kakamega, and he's wondering what's happening. This will remind us that actually the UDA party boss, William Ruto, has always said that, or he has always had confidence in IEBC. Each and every time that anyone has raised issue over the integrity or competence of IEBC, he has come out actually claiming that IEBC should be left alone to do its work. With those ones, I think the two, maybe Abdul Swamad, Sheriff, and Barasa, the two leading candidates for Kakamega and Mombasa, their elections, which will be held on a later date, which is yet to be announced by IEBC, will be more of, or will have the characters of any other by-election in the country. And you know, with the by-elections, the reality is always different. If you remember, MDG won an Ogenya seat in a by-election that was held midterm. I really doubt if the same party can win any seat in this particular election, because by-elections always come with the different trajectories. So these two people could be advantaged or disadvantaged. We also know that by-elections come with very low voter turnout. And lastly, apart from appealing for you to be peaceful, in fact, it is very good for you to be peaceful. It does not make sense at all for you to start chasing your neighbor with a panga. You're chasing a fellow poor man with a panga because of results of an election which happened in a polling center, and those who are charged with these elections are in Nairobi. The person you're chasing has nothing to do with the elections. Ni maskini kama wewe. He's also struggling with the same challenges. Na wewe unakimbia, and maybe he too, he has nothing to do with the errors that you're complaining about. That one does not make any sense at all. If you sit down and give it a thorough soul searching, you will notice that Kenyans are their own worst enemies. Because when you say that Ruto will lose this election and he will go to Sugoi, the reality is that Ruto lives in Karen. He will go in Sugoi if he feels like. And if they're saying Raila is going to Bondo, Raila is not going to Bondo. He lives in the city, probably in Karen. I'm not much well versed with the geography of the city. But what I'm so assured is that Raila lives in Nairobi. Yes, he has a home in Nairobi. So if he loses an election, he's not going to Bondo. And you, wewe kama mpiga kura wa kawaida, I want to assure you one thing. There is this WhatsApp group that you belong to, and it is not uncommon to see you hurling expletives and throwing insults to people who belong to the other political camp. You see, if this candidate that you're supporting wins an election, okay, let me begin from the negative side. If he loses an election, you also lose because he has lost. This one should stick in your mind. If he loses an election, your candidate, be it a presidential candidate, be it an MCA candidate, if he loses an election, you also lose. And again, if he wins an election, you will still lose. You have nothing you win nothing. You have nothing to celebrate. At the end of the day, he will go back to the city to flock with those of his class. Once he is elected to the position he was seeking, he will be cutting deals with those who belong to the same class with him. Wewe utabaki tu pale kijijini ukikunywa busa. Na yule mtu mwenye ulikuwa unatusi. That is the reality. You have very little stakes in this election. But if you elect a statesman, at least if there are some positive changes in the governance of the country or the constituency, everybody will be feeling the positive changes. But if you elect a thief, or a conman, or a seasoned fraudster, or a wash specialist, or a drug baron, the reality is that everyone, including those who supported him, will be feeling the pinch of his ineptitude, incompetence, and his greed. That is the reality that nobody is telling you. Sasa usikimbize maskini mwenzako kwa sababu bwenyenye fulani ameanguka namna gani, ameanguka kura. Be your brother's keeper. I remember when COVID came, I saw even locally here. In fact, I was very touched when I saw somebody distributing maize from his own barn. Alitoa kwa gala yake mahindi, akaja nayo, akaweka sokoni, akawa anapatia watu. This 2 kg tin, kolo gorogoro, anapea moja. That one is the kind of brotherhood that we look forward to in this country. But if you start attacking your neighbor because somebody else has lost an election, then you are the most confused human being. And I believe I've talked about everything that I wanted to talk about. I said this is civic education because the law bars anybody from campaigning at this particular period. campaigning, the days are over. When you saw these ones, you saw things like this one. Now tomorrow is the D-Day, and you must be aware that out of these contestants, only one will win. In fact, Likuyani has around 60 participants. That is parliamentary and civic. And out of these 60 participants, only 6 will win. That means a good number will go home empty-handed. So as much as you wish and hope for victory, you must also be prepared for a loss. So when you hear that it isn't your man who has won, ujue tu kwa mashindano kuna kushinda na kuna kushindwa. Ni hayo tu kwa sasa. But most importantly, tomorrow I'll be walking around guarding my votes. Oh, sorry. I was forgetting to tell you that Kevin Wafula has sent me to greet you. I'm talking to people from Likuyani ward, not Likuyani constituency. Kevin Wafula has sent you to greet you. And again, there are people who are very special to me, whom I cannot forget. These are people who went ahead and made strides in making sacrifices just for the ambitions of a friend or a brother. Siku yenyu bado. Saa zile tutakuwa tunasherekea, nitasema mambo yote. Kwa sasa tulikuwa tukisema tu kidogo. But after I will be done with guarding my votes, I will be back in this Hoof FM studios. I will assemble the equipment and I will play you rumba non-stop. I know most stations have changed the diet. I've heard my brother Udumbe Ogola saying that they're just serving gospel music, which looks a bit different or conspicuous. But me, I will play you rumba mwanzo mpaka mwisho. Because I do not want you to feel that there is something which is different or something which is amiss. As you'll be awaiting for the victory of the HOOF-MAN and that of the candidate whom you are supporting, I wish you the best. I'll be playing you rumba. And as Governor Mandago once said, he said that siasa unaweka kwa lungs, unapumua tu, alafu inaisha. Ama unapumua na gani? Roho inakuwa upande hii ama upande hii, na hii yangu ni kama imeanguka. Usiweke kwa roho, unaweka kwa lungs. Roho inakuwa upande gani? Yangu ni kama imepotea kidogo. I can also advise you that siasa usiweke hata kwa roho, usiweke kwa lungs, weka kwa rectum, so that if things don't go right, you just breathe through the other mouth. And all will be well. And lastly, ya mwisho kabla sijaondoka, I will remind you of an old Turkish maxim. It talks about the forest and the axe. It says that the forest was shrinking drastically, but the trees kept on voting for the axe. They kept on voting for the axe in the belief that since it had a wooden handle, it will not harm them. But the forest kept on shrinking. Hayo tafakari. Asanteni.